Okay, I'm live with Mr. Wright, and we're talking about writing, the craft of writing, and the craft and compulsion of writing. What drives us to write? Ashtray, ashtray, and the background of the literary world, and what has led us to this point where we are actually contemplating putting out more content. And
Yeah.
so I always wanted to write for money so I wouldn't have to work for a living. This has not worked out for
Hmm.
me very well, but I tried to develop a certain amount of, I tried to learn how to write. I read books on how to write from the time I was about 8 years old. And I read Stephen King's work on writing. There's a lot of books on how to write books. And I read
Yeah.
anthologies of famous writers writing about their writing process. Joyce Carol Oates comes to mind. It seems like Joyce
Hmm.
Carol Oates has written almost about as much about writing as she has written books. And a lot of it's good material, you know. And then they say, well, you need to read the great books. I start reading, and it's find very hard to do, you know, Tolstoy and all these guys.
Yeah.
Dickens and trying to learn the
Absolutely.
craft. So tell me, Mr. Wright, how what was your beginnings like in that respect? Was it similar to mine, or what prompted you to write?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, thanks for having me, Dr. Breck. I really do appreciate any opportunity that we can talk, especially as it pertains to writing. So for me, let's see, it's similar to you, just well, it's funny, I was sort of on the short bus, right, for from kindergarten through to second grade. Third grade is when things kind of flipped. So I was in the, I had to, I needed special instruction pretty early on. But then here, third grade comes around, and I've got Star Wars novels that are this thick, right? And adult level novels for a third grader. I guess it's one of those things. If you're interested in something, it can it can inspire a kid to um, get pretty smart, right, in short order. So, and I think I've seen that too with homeschool with the kids, is that you present them with something that they're interested in, and all of a sudden now, well, they've learned to read, right? Hopefully it's not Roblox, messaging amongst each other that uh, promotes a spirit of reading. But nevertheless, from there, it really just moved into Lewis Carroll, Robert A. Heinlein throughout my teen years. I read, I haven't read all of Heinlein, but actually, it's funny you mention books that writers write on writing, and Grumbles from the Grave by Heinlein comes to mind with I don't know if you're familiar with that. I know James is familiar with it. And it's, the correspondence shared between Heinlein and some of his contemporaries. There's sort of a funny bit between he and L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology. There's a back and forth, and you can kind of get the sense that Heinlein dropped off after some time. So, um, anyways, with writing, I think I exhibited art, drawing. That was my real thing, but I was always a better writer, and always enjoyed it. I actually came across this post on X by a Michael Strong. I don't know who he is, but it was just one of those things that kind of came into my feed, and I, just to had to screenshot it. It's very true. It's sort of, it's sort of a um what is it? it's common sense, but so, common sense can be good sometimes. So it's when people who read a lot write well, it's because at some point they develop something they actually want to say. They've been absorbing language and structure and style for years through their reading. Then an idea emerges that feels important to them. They need to express it. At that point, writing becomes natural. They've got thousands of hours and language patterns embedded in their neural pathways. Developing their own written voice feels organic rather than forced. Extensive reading creates the foundation that makes writing possible. I don't know anything about this Michael Strong, so politically or otherwise, but I think that. What do you think of that?
I think that's very apt. I would agree with that. Leanna says she'd agree too.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I was going to ask you, insofar as I know Heinlein wrote a lot of books you said were influential on you. He wrote like The Moon is a Harsh
Mm.
Mistress, which was a lot of them were kind of targeted toward young people. Did you
Yeah, the
also,
juvenile stuff. It's good stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and still good stuff for kids to read, in my opinion, but did you also read anything by Andre Norton?
Oh yeah. So um I just have to clarify. I've only read one thing by Andre Norton, and this was later in life. This was with my kids. It's this obscure little book called Outside. I don't know if you've read it, but
Haven't.
it's a sort of a Logan's Run. Like it's something like Logan's Run where you've got this self-contained city, and there's the survivors of this city. There's just been this entropic sort of thing going on for a number of generations. So you've just got a crop of young people, and then this mysterious stranger visits them, and um, sort of a Pied Piper archetype, and he finds them a way out. But that's all I've read of Andre Norton. I kind of want to hear, if what sort of Andre Norton books you've read. But I just want to add to that. I've found that some of my favorite science fiction has been written by women, quite frankly. A good variety of them, of my favorite works, were written by women. Mary Q. Steele comes to mind, Journey Outside. That's a great one. And then, you know, uh, what is it? Remnant Population by Elizabeth Moon, and the list. I mean, the list just goes on. But let me know, what have you read of Andre Norton?
I actually really like Andre Norton's historical fiction as a kid.
Mm,
And she wrote a lot of science fiction, but I was just asking for that reason of what you'd encountered, because in a lot of libraries when I grew up, you saw more of her historical fiction, and she actually wrote quite a few historical novels, unless I'm mistaken. I haven't read a ton of them, but I have seen them in the dust jackets of old books that would usually list a writer's individual works, and I was
yeah.
surprised at how many historical books she had written, because I was aware. Go on, go sit down, go on. And so I
She was prolific, wasn't she? She wrote a lot.
super
I mean, she
prolific,
she wrote a whole lot.
but
Dime novels and whatnot.
well, yeah, a lot of good books. They were all well written. My favorite series was about a guy who rides with a young man who rides in the Civil War with Bedford Forrest, and
Mm, wow.
so that was my favorite series of hers as a
She
child.
did some alternate history. Is that what
No,
I'm
it's
hearing?
it's contemporary history. I mean, it was real. It's
Oh,
real
oh, it's
historical
real
fiction.
stuff. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's not science fiction at all. It's just based on a Civil War novel, and that
Yeah,
was one of
that she
my
kind of
favorite.
reminds me of Isaac Asimov in that sense, where he's known for science fiction, but he's touched so much nonfiction. It just he just dwarfs anybody else out there. He's got a history of the world. It's like yay big, and then there's like these. he's got a series of these little science, you great illustration, these little science books, like one is about blood, one is about it just goes on down these different rabbit holes into different science topics for kids, but also good for adults. And so I suppose Andre Norton's um sort of similar in that regard, huh?
Apparently, I did not know she had such a broad range, but apparently she did. Or I did know rather, and I've just kind of, we're just kind of talking about it. But I really think Isaac Asimov is a perfect example of a science fiction writer. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
he was like a scientist, and could convey scientific ideas. But I read a memoir he put out years ago. I don't remember the name of it, but he was such an engaging, personable writer, even though he was, I thought, well, he's a leftist, this and that, but it was just an immensely engaging novel. Or not novel, but
yeah.
memoir.
So there's no secret that you and I we tend to be more conservative, and yet we're still able to enjoy the works of. I mean, look, you'd be hard pressed to find um, conservative leaning science fiction. It's out there, but the way I look at it is, with the utopian stuff and the um, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, or even transhumanist, just the sort of terrain that the left tends to exalt. I'm able to take what I can from these works, and spit out the bones, if you will. There's a lot of great stuff, like even like, all right, so um, all right, so like these two, right? Let me see if you can see this. So Samuel Delaney.
Yeah,
I'll read something like that, and I mean, there it's grotesque. He's pretty grotesque if you know his back
yeah,
catalog,
I'm familiar with
but
Delaney's works.
what's that?
I'm familiar with Delaney's works, yes.
Yeah, yeah. But is that something that you're able to I guess you're able to wade in literature that is at odds with your own understanding of the world, your own political views, your own um, ethos, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah, especially the older stuff, it's easier to deal with from, prior 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years old because they had a good command of the English language, good grammar. You had to respect their, well, they might have had a different ideology. They had their discipline of writing down. They had a good prose style.
Yeah,
There's so much to respect about just these varying writers. Uh,
yeah. I think it's also reasonable to say we can give some of them a pass um, in a certain era, right? Or like far enough back, we hadn't looked under every rock under these ideologies. There's sort of like, all right, some of these 1700s proto science fiction authors, you're able to kind of give them a pass in a way, right?
yeah,
So,
it's very,
but yeah, so back on the I'm wondering, does Leanna want to add anything to anything we've discussed thus far?
No, I my favorite, if I'm going to pick a genre, is historical fiction.
Oh yeah. What
Um,
do you like from historical fiction?
just like the fact that people can take enough fact and really portray what the world was like in that time frame while also telling a great tale.
Yeah, it's not
Really perceive
it's not easy to do, to be historically accurate. I've actually wrestled with that as a writer, where I've written, I wrote fairly James has seen some of it, James LaFond. I wrote an interactive fiction piece, and it's about the size of a novelette, I want to say, but it's set in ancient Persia in the Sassanid period, and it's really a hard thing to write historical fiction because you don't want to get it wrong, But then you read the likes of L. Frank Baum and some of these imaginative writers who they take a creative license, and it's almost you know it there's an etiquette to it. You can get some things wrong, know.
yeah,
Um, and I don't know. There's a balance there, but as a writer, it definitely what is it? It holds me back a bit. It was challenging for me to write that bit in like in ancient Persian setting. But you want to get everything down to the belt buckle, right? You want to get everything down to the type of horses that they commandeered
yep.
and the manner in which they spoke, but at the end of the day, you're just going to be stuck sort of in stasis, and you're not going to get anything done if you just don't do it. If you just don't I mean you get sort of you get in this paralysis, I
You get
think, when
really
writing historical fiction. So
Well,
anyone that can exercise that is, that they have my respect.
you get bogged down, and I can speak to this a little bit because I've attempted historical fiction before unsuccessfully. James, I thought, did a great job in his novel, The Jericho Bone, uh,
Mm,
I'm sure you've read.
I
And
haven't read it, but it's set in ancient it's Arabic or like Arabian, right?
well,
Or
yeah, it takes place in the Middle East, partially, and Egypt and
yeah.
so forth. But yeah, you must read that book. That's James's big book. Everybody, we all have a big book in us, and that's James's big book. And
Wow.
that was the one I think he worked on for several years. And so you talked about the video with him that you released, Alien Anthropologist, right? Okay,
Yeah.
well, I was thinking, is the Jericho Bone going to come up? Is the Jericho Bone come up? Once you read it, you'll understand what that designation
Oh, I
has
must.
to
Yeah.
do. Because I was
Yeah.
thinking, is Jericho? I was just waiting, and it's totally cool that it didn't come up. But once you read it, you'll understand the background of Alien Anthropologist, because it's not really
Oh.
a horror novel in my book. It has elements of horror in it, but it's not. And this is why James's was kind of. It was kind of it doesn't have the plot twists that people expect it to have. So it's a very unique
Mm.
book in my opinion.
He
And go ahead.
he does that's one I'm definitely going to put in the rotation. Just kind of hearing you talk about it, I've noticed James does this a lot. He subverts the reader's expectations, but he does it in such a good way. Like in Sunset Saga, he takes turns. You look like I have to write a forward or a preface to these books, right? He's been so gracious in providing them to me. He wants me to curate them, and so I've graciously accepted. And one of the things I want to make clear to the reader from the get is don't fall in love with these characters.
Yeah,
He'll kill them off. Like
you never know what's going to happen
spoiler
to
alert.
them. But in the
Yeah. So
beginning, go ahead.
no, please. I want to hear more about Jericho
No,
Bone.
I won't give away the plot, but I'm just going to say, in the beginning, you as a Christian specifically, because the Jericho Bone is like the first thing I ever read from James. because he,
Yeah,
I was,
that goes back to a Robert Stark interview, isn't it? Like, where
well,
you
I got
yeah.
Robert Stark to interview James years after I started reading him. So Robert and I used to
Oh,
have a
okay.
AM radio show in Fresno years ago. Weird story, but
Wow,
uh, that's so I turned to
that's
Robert.
wild.
I turned to Robert to try to get James some exposure. Um, and I guess it kind of worked, really. But what? But no, years ago, the Jericho Bone was like the first fiction he put on his site, as fiction. And I
Like a
read it.
serialization sort
Yes, exactly.
of deal?
And yeah, and I
Yeah.
read it, and I just want to say at the beginning, as a Christian, I was a little taken aback by his beginning, but it's like you talked about killing off characters and doing stuff. I was taken aback,
Yeah.
but also I was really not just taken aback, but I was kind of. And this goes back to what we're talking about leftist writers. I had to respect how he wrote this scene, and that scene stuck with me
Oh,
so hard I had to keep going back and reading it. It's a very early
yeah.
scene in the book, but the point of the matter is, yeah, that is an amazing book, and uh, it is, yeah. There are certain aspects of it people will be like, I don't agree with this ideologically. I don't think James is anti-Christian at all, but in the book, it does.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
it,
you hit it. You just hit the alien anthropologist right there. That right in the eye. That's exactly see, that's the thing. You can't take one book of James and pin it on him like that's his identity. And you found this, the more you read of him, he slips into different worldviews seamlessly. He'll be the Muslim, he'll be the Christian, he'll be the killer of Christians, he'll be the atheist, he'll be the degenerate, he'll be any he'll slip into any character, or rather um he observes he's observant of well, he's an alien anthropologist. It's just that simple. And it sounds like Jericho Bone is no exception. Didn't he research cannibalism for that book? Is that the one?
there's a lot of,
You know,
well, it has to do with the plague, where they actually did cannibalize a lot of people, and they were digging up corpses to eat and stuff like that. And in ancient
wow,
Egypt, it
documented.
was Black Death, the period of the Black Death, and but to get back to your point with historical fiction, you get tied down, and I wish James would speak to this. Maybe you could ask him about this, how he avoided getting tied down with the research, because you do get tied down with the
Oh
research,
yeah. Well,
and I wanted to do not only do everything perfectly, but I wanted to dazzle
yeah.
the reader with all the knowledge. And so I read so many books trying to, preparatory phase, and then I could never. I would run across little things. Well, I got to go back and research this, and there's no really any internet at this period of time that
Yeah.
I can adequately research, and I can't always go to library every day, so I get bogged down in the process of trying to write historical fiction in the past. I'm saying, and so because I need to know what kind of shoes they wore back then, or what kind of shoes the ladies wore, or what kind of gloves they wore. What did they call those gloves? And all these little minutia bog you down unnecessarily.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's I've sort of learned to let it go a little bit, where I can there's a um there's a happy middle ground, I think. There's I guess the perfection is the enemy of good, or is that what they say? It's a hard
Perfectionism.
thing, but see, he's able to produce this stuff like hotcakes, right? He's able to just get him out the door. But there's almost an inversion with James where he will at least with the Sunset Saga, his research will prompt him to go down the path of plantation America, which my understanding is he wants to get out of it. I don't mean to speak for the man, but I think it's on record. He's done what? He's on his 13th in the series, with no end in sight. And that was all just research he was doing into the crafting of a fictional series, Sunset Saga. Stumbled upon primary texts, and it resulted in a departure or a side quest that hasn't been adjourned. So there's almost an inversion there where, um, where I'm wanting to bring, I'm relegating my research to that Persian story. I'm not kind of breaking out the confines of that. I just want to finish this thing up and then move on to the next thing. Whereas with James, his world just broadens. So
Yeah.
I've observed.
And James is just like, it's interesting. He's, as everybody knows, James is a pugilist, and you meet so many people in their worlds in gyms because people bring their worlds into gyms. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And you see people at their bare essence in the boxing gym, and it helps you get into people's worlds and understand them better. So as a boxing coach, James is a psychologist, and for a lot of different kinds of people that he can then get into their heads and make them characters
Yeah.
for within these books. And so that's, I think, one
Well,
of the
there's a lot of.
advantages he's had.
Are there not several authors of notoriety whom were boxers themselves?
Yeah, like
Teddy Roosevelt wrote a good many works. A lot of people don't
Hemingway.
know that.
Hemingway
Ornithology, American history, all sort politics, or philosophy, politics, all sorts of things. He was a boxer. You have Ernest Hemingway. You have I can't think of any others at the moment, but I've encountered several.
there's a litany of them. James
Oh,
actually
Louis
wanted,
L'Amour. There's one.
yeah,
Yeah. Go ahead.
James actually wanted me to write an article on all the writers that have been boxers, and there's actually a whole bunch of them. I'm just not prepared at the moment.
Yeah.
I could name 6 or 7 more if I put my mind to it. I might
Well,
do
let me
that
ask.
sometime. And I'm just saying that's one example of experiences. We can we can jump over one of my favorite writers, female writer too, Dorothy Dannett. Leanna has been working her way through Danette's series. I referred her to Danette's series. Dannett is a historical fiction author, and I really respect her method of blending fiction together with research. So it's literary
Oh yeah.
fiction, and the language is very good. But they're very well researched, but it seems effortless the way she
Hmm.
puts information and keeps everything uh, period specific and period correct at the same time, uh, doing without seeming to try, without making it a lecture or like
Hmm.
a nonfiction history. It's very effortless the way she blends all the facts in with the fiction.
Do you mind clarifying or defining literary fiction for me? I've encountered this recently, and it's funny, of all the reading I've done, this is a new concept for me, but it's been around for a good long while. What is literary fiction exactly?
Well, the genre, what is literary fiction, is so you've read You read my first book, right? Where the Devil Don't Go.
I have not. I've started it. I read Black House Rocked.
Okay, so the first story in it is kind of a mockery of literary fiction, which is kind of like, to me, it's fiction written where the plot is secondary to how we craft everything,
Hmm.
and the characters are secondary to how the writing is. You know how the sentences
Oh,
are
okay.
formed.
So it's more maybe topical, would you say, where perhaps the story is the vehicle by which a broader ecosystem of ideas can be explored? Is that
Uh,
accurate, perhaps?
Either ideas or just writing. People just, it's like piano playing or noodling on the guitar, or what do you call it?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. That makes
riffing
sense. So it's
and carrying
yeah.
on. And I don't like it in the sense that they subordinate everything else to just writing. Putting words on paper.
Do you
Uh,
think Dow Mossman's The Stones of Summer would be literary fiction?
I
Or
think
even
I think it's considered
I wonder.
what. Oh, I think it's considered literary fiction. It's like,
Yeah, it seems that way.
look at James Joyce is what I'm talking about. Something like the Dubliners. You know,
Okay.
literary.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Or Thomas Pynchon, maybe.
Yes,
Is
exactly.
that his name?
That's classically
Yeah, yeah.
known as literary fiction, and
Yeah.
some of it's good,
Yeah.
but a lot of the academic stuff is terrible, and that's what I satirize in the first story in my other uh,
Mhm.
collection.
It's
Um,
almost like that New Yorker stuff, you know?
exactly,
New
exactly.
York journalist stuff, right?
That's the bad stuff that
That
I'm
New England.
I'm attacking. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I would
that makes
actually,
sense.
one of my efforts to become a writer was I went back and read all the best American short story anthologies going back to 1979. So,
Oh, nice.
those are bound up. They're in the libraries. I assume they're still in libraries, assuming they have books in libraries or whatever. But all these
Mhm.
short story collections, the best short stories of 1984, best short stories of 1983, going back.
Yeah,
I only
that's the way
read
to
them in
do it.
1979. They go back. I don't know when they started collecting them, but I read all these anthologies to study how people wrote short stories to help me
So
craft
good, yeah.
mine. Yeah. And I'm just saying a lot of
Yeah, that's good
these
stuff.
were literary short stories, stuff like Joyce Carol Oates writes, which, I guess has some depth, but who remembers who Joyce Carol Oates is today, for the most
Yeah,
part.
I hadn't heard the name, but I'm definitely, I'm taking notes, so,
Well, I mean, I'm not
um
saying she's a great writer. I'm just saying, yeah, she is the kind of woman who's published in the New Yorker and in, the Atlantic and all that, so
it's amazing how some authors were a big deal at one point,
yeah,
and then they just fall out of like Edith Nesbit, right?
yeah,
She
exactly.
was we're talking a lot of female authors today. This is interesting. Yeah, Edith Nesbit, I mean, she was a big deal. I
Yeah,
mean, the what was it? She did Magic City. She did all these all this children's literature um that's like British children's literature, like up there with Kingsley and even um uh McDonald, just great stuff. And now it's like nobody remembers her. But
yeah.
if you look back at what people were talking about, she was very much in the orbits of you know, the greats. So it's just interesting.
Well, look at Taylor Caldwell. I
I
mean,
I,
Taylor,
I wanted
go ahead.
I hadn't heard that name.
She was huge in the 60s, 50s through the 70s. And she was a John Birch Society woman, but she, her novels were massive. That she was bigger than Ayn Rand. Um,
Whoa. Okay, that's like
because she put
you're
out
a
more
juggernaut at
novels
that
than
point.
Ayn Rand. She had more bestsellers and more hit novels than Ayn Rand. And
Wow.
she was a massive, massive female author, and she wrote about, serious topics and from a right-wing perspective. And
Yeah.
and I'm just saying, nobody remembers Taylor Caldwell anymore.
I'm ashamed to admit I've only read of Ayn Rand's. I've only read her Anthem
Oh,
novella.
you're not missing anything.
They're big books. They're big ones, yeah. I hate to kind of necromance some of the terrain we've already covered, but I did so I want to go back to boxing for a second, as it seems to be such a prevalent theme here. Do you suppose that in boxing you learn to, or in any kind of combative art, you learn to parry, you learn to dodge, you learn to um in a way disarm or subdue an opponent? Is that does that translate to writing? You've got this monkey on your back, you've got this project that it's, and you know this, I've heard some of your stuff, you get a little loopy, and you, it can, not to romanticize the thing, but there's a sort of agony behind writing a book or a dissertation or what have you, or any kind of large project. So I see boxing, like I see someone what James does, where he's able to parry with his work. He's able to push it out of the ring. He's able to get it out there. Does that
Well,
make sense?
yeah,
I'm trying to
absolutely.
vocalize it, but
And
I'm having trouble.
as you were talking about this, it came to me who the king of the boxing to writing analogies was, and that's Norman Mailer. Everything was boxing
Hmm.
and writing to him, and he loved boxing, and he boxed himself all his life up to his elderly years. And all every time he talked about writing or anything else, he made constant analogies to boxing, and
Wow.
the relationship between boxing and writing and what it meant to him specifically as well. So
Yeah. Yeah. So that was sort of his way of describing, there's a kinetic thing involved with writing. There's there, you're contending with this thing, um this entity. At some point you mold it, it's got a, yeah, it's a very strange thing. You get attached to these things. I remember when I finished my dissertation and doctoral, and I was done with it all. It was like, now what do I do? I like, on to the next thing, I suppose. But it's almost like it dies, in a way. I don't know if you've experienced that. Everyone's different, and every project's different for me too. Like, I'm able to put some to bed, and then others stay with me for years. I've got this manuscript, the science fiction manuscript I wrote in when I was 21, and it's been with me for 20 years. And it's just been reminding me, um, pretty much perennially, that I need to do something with it. But our first work is a pile of ass, so it's like, do you really want to revisit that? I don't know. If you were to
well,
ask James, he'd say leave no rock unturned. He'd say get anything you do, he like repurpose what you do, um, and polish it up, get it out there. So
yeah, why not?
this is something
Yeah,
I'm learning.
you
Yeah.
know, I've never written anything, and I had a statement I was going to make, and I forgot it, but I've never written anything that I didn't want to just make money with. So I unfortunately don't have any passion projects per se, but I understand that. And the other thing is, you're just not very good at writing till you've written 100,000 words, and
Yeah.
that's the best advice I ever got from all the stacks of reading books I ever read. But my first
Yeah.
novel, it has issues, I'm sure. I would put it out there if somebody would publish it, but I want money in advance. which I'm not going to get.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's fine. But I'm
I
just
might have
saying,
to plunk down. I might have to appeal to your mercenary spirit at
well,
some
I'm
point.
just
Just be like,
saying, you have a first novel that's unpublished. I have a first
yeah,
novel that's unpublished. I'm just saying, from my perspective, I'm not ashamed of it, and you shouldn't be either, in my opinion. You know, don't.
yeah, that's good. No, that's real good. That's sound advice. It's what's the worst that can happen? Because people are wrapped up in their own stuff at the end of the day. So if you've got an ass of a novel, like,
I mean,
your
how bad could
reputation
it
isn't
be?
tarnished,
That's the thing, is how bad could it be? These women are releasing romance novels all the time. It's ridiculous number of,
They're a far
you know,
cry.
yeah, far cry worse. How bad could it be when you think about it?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
look at what the
I
average person checks out of a library, and if it's the plot and the thought you put into your novel, your science fiction novel, of creating that world or creating those characters, all that effort you put in when you were 21, uh, it will mean something to some readers. It's going to mean something
Yeah, yeah,
to some
yeah.
readers. Just like Sanction means something to us as a book. It may not be a ton of readers, but there ain't a ton of readers out there anyway. It's going to mean something to a select group of readers to whom it speaks.
Oh,
Your
sure.
work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you've
And let me just say one more thing in terms of you being a critic of yourself, because
yeah,
I told you this. I think I told you the story. I might have told somebody else about Richard Barrett, not Richard Barrett, but Al writing these notes on one of my short stories. He wrote notes, copious notes of criticism on this story, and
oh, he's a good man.
years
That's
later,
someone you hold
yeah,
close.
yeah.
Yeah,
Years later, he said, I was probably too harsh to you. And I said, no, that was awesome. I love those
that's what
notes.
you need.
I love those
You need that.
notes.
Yes,
And
you
I
need
love
someone
that there
that's
was
not
only
gonna
one complimentary thing in the whole thing, and it happened to do with one sentence of the whole
you tore
story.
it up.
There was one complimentary deal. Like, this is a good description here, and I love that, Al. Don't I can't tell you how much I appreciated your criticism. But that being said,
I'm gonna have to
I
get in touch with Richard Barrett.
I don't.
I'm gonna have to
No,
get in
it's
touch
not
with him.
Richard. It's a
That's good
different guy.
stuff.
Different guy.
Oh, okay.
Named Al Stanford. He's kind of
I thought you
living
said Richard.
undercover. He's a poet. Really great guy. Like a real. Like, he used to ride trains for fun. He would. He was a genuine hobo. But
Oh yeah.
yeah. But anyway. On the other hand, from that perspective, I've been reading a lot of old criticism, like, and I'm thinking, this is terrible. Like old movie critics and old book critics of famous works
Yeah.
that are beloved in society
Yeah.
today, and all their petty criticism of that work doesn't hold up at all. Pauline, is it Pauline Kael? You know what I'm talking about?
No, but is she
She was
is she like a
she was the New
critic by
York
trade?
she was the New York Times critic in the 70s. And
These are people, they're probably the most loathsome people because they don't create anything of value.
yes,
They just, they're a net deficit. Like it's one thing if okay, you're a Hemingway and a Fitzgerald and you guys have a rivalry, and that's okay. That's cool because you've done it,
yeah.
But yeah. So what did you find in reading these critiques?
Well, I'm just thinking, all these critiques mean nothing anymore. You wasted all your time savaging these books and movies that everybody loves today. Nobody remembers your review, and you
Right.
saying, Charlton Heston was a wooden actor. Remember they always used to say so and so was a
Right.
wooden actor, and you go back and watch these, or
Yeah.
Hemingway. There's nothing there in Hemingway's books. They're just so
Yeah. Or
unemotional.
you're the guy in history that, like, your whole shtick is you really don't like, like a president, like, or like that's what you're known for. That's your
Yeah,
mark on the world, is you just bitch and moan,
and nobody remembers it after a certain point. So that's what I'm getting at. Is I like to go back through archives. When I'll just give an example. When I was doing a lot of political work, I would go back through newspapers and read
Yeah.
their old, back to their inception. Like I would sit in the newspaper office and go through their archive.
Oh, were you doing the microfiche and stuff? Or, like, you
Well,
were in the archives, or?
well, they actually would have like big books. They would make the old newspapers into books, like,
Oh,
and then you could
oh
go
yeah.
through and read those, going back to the early 1900s or whenever, and read these copies of the, there'd be a book for every year of all the
Yeah.
newspapers, um, you know, published together for their archives. But anyway, the point is, you'd see all this information that everybody had forgotten or been published at one time, whether it was true or false, had been proven over time, but
Yeah.
it was all in that. So I'm just saying, then you go back and read these critics and their reviews of books and movies and other plays and whatever, and think,
Yeah.
you really wasted your time savaging these people. You could have just maybe
You,
said, I
you
don't like certain things about it, but that's
what
me personally.
what you could have done, instead of what they could have done, is do something like Jonathan Swift, be a satiricist, and do something that, I mean, Gulliver's Travels is a staple. I did some research into Gulliver's Travels. Just, it pokes fun at everything, right? It's so biting. Um, and it's even, it's still relevant to today. It speaks to the human condition, and it pokes fun at us and our proclivities. Even, what is it, 400 years? No, it's not that old. 300 years later, 320 years, what have you. I'm getting that wrong. Someone fact check me at some point. But what is it? I discovered in my reading, Gulliver's Travels is generated among the first fan fiction ever. There was a whole slew of fan fiction that came out of Gulliver's Travels way back when. These sort of bootleg Gulliver's Travels sequels and stuff. And this is, well, I digress, but just going back to your critiques, they could have been Voltaire's, but instead they harnessed their energies to just this, like, vapid surface level criticism, and producing nothing of worth.
300 years is right. You are on the money.
Oh, cool. Right on.
And
Thank
yeah,
you for that,
I
Leanna.
agree with that. I agree with your deal. I also liked Smith's, not Smith, Gulliver's
Oh,
Travels.
Swift.
Swift's A
Yep.
Modest Proposal. That was what made me want to
Yeah.
do satire.
He almost got burned for that, literally. Yeah.
That's what made me want to do satire. So I'm just saying that was
Oh,
also.
cool. Let me ask you this. So, I've read some of your work, um, and you're a Christian man, Um, do you struggle with kind of putting out more macabre, dark stuff? Being a Christian, how do you reconcile that? I've encountered it myself. I've got like
I just
a
wouldn't do it
novella.
today.
Yeah, yeah, I understand that.
I
I'm in
just
the predicament where my work, I wrote it, back in 2009, and I'm now reworking it, and it's got some content in there back in my lost days. So as a Christian, it's like, do I release it, or do I throw it to the bone heap, or do I doctor it up in some way where the Christian message prevails, or do I do like James does and be able to explore these ideas without tethering yourself to them, because at the end of the day we do live in a fallen world.
Well, I here's my thought on that. I'm not opposed to. Well, let me put it this way. Evelyn Waugh is one of my big influences as a writer, and he wrote a lot of stuff that would be considered degenerate in the context of satirizing it as a Christian. So he did not advocate for degeneracy. He puts degeneracy in his books to satirize it and the people who do that kind of behavior. So he did not like Orwell's 1984 because he felt like it did not show the absence of God and the absence of Christianity. So he decided to write a specifically Christian.
That's a good point. It's more of an anti-statist. Sorry,
Yeah,
keep going. I'm sorry.
It has no, and this goes back to what you were talking about, creating fan fiction. So he did not create fan fiction. He wrote a basically, I can't think of the name of the book. Evelyn Waugh wrote and I read it many times. I can tell you the plot of it. It's a novel about a dystopian world similar to what Orwell created, but for example, it has like aspects of transsexuality and the effects of abortion and other sins.
When was it written? When was it written?
Early 50s.
Okay, that's beyond. That's probably later than what my familiarity with.
It was written after what was after 1984. But after Orwell, Waugh wrote this book specifically to not to rebut, but to show a different example, like of a godless world from a Christian perspective. So he wanted to write, and all his books were written from his perspective as a devout Catholic, which is whatever, you can say. I'm not judging the Catholicism so much as just saying that that's what he thought of himself, and he was very opposed to a lot of aspects of modernity and atheism. So that's it's not coming up. It's not a handful of dust. Let me look here, baby, in 1 minute. But anyway, the point is that's an example of how you can portray degeneracy in your work and darkness without legitimizing it or making it appealing to the reader.
For sure.
So to me, I'm not ashamed of what I did with those books, because the bad people don't come out looking good in my books. People who do horrible things or unchristian things don't ever come out ahead in my books, and they are a parable, if you will, against a lot of bad behavior. So I'm not ashamed of, but at the same time, I'm not going to go out and do it again, the same way. If I were to do it over again, I would try to do excuse me, differently, but I'm still not ashamed of it. And
you don't regret it.
Yeah.
You don't regret it though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll say, I don't write a thing.
Go ahead.
I'm like, if I find an author that I really love and enjoy, I will go back and read their books in the order in which they wrote them. because
Yeah.
I would like to see the development. If you pay attention, you can see the development of the writer as a person um, when you read their books from beginning to end. And
Yeah.
I like to
It's
see
that's
that.
almost this story of the author is almost the metadata that brings further context into the work.
Yes,
As you're talking, Leanna, I'm thinking of Edwin A. Abbott, who wrote Flatland: A Romance of Many Dimensions. He was a mathematician, but more importantly, I believe he was a devout, maybe Anglican, and most of his work actually dealt in Christianity. It was historical fiction, you know, plopping plopping somebody within the times of Christ. But then he writes this wonderfully weird science fiction novel called Flatland, a world of two dimensions. And one of the denizens of this world is visited by a sphere who resides in the world of three dimensions. And he's basically, he guides this two-dimensional a square through the process of comprehending greater dimensions than his own. That doesn't seem very Christian, does it? However, if you really think about it, there's a parable there in that there's something grand, there's something bigger than us.
yes,
um and for Abbott, that's Jesus Christ, right?
yes,
So that's just what I thought when I was kind of hearing you out, Leanna. But you wouldn't understand that though if you didn't understand who the the
and
author behind the work
you would
truly
start from
is.
the beginning with them. I feel like when you read a prolific author in order, not necessarily how they were published, but how they were written in order, you get to see how their life is going kind of through their writing because of the small, subtle changes. Or, in the first book they wrote, it was very this. But in the fifth book, it had, segued to something a little bit different. And in their 20th book is completely different than the first one
Well,
because they've grown.
well, the first book is
Yeah.
always somewhat autobiographical, autobiographical,
Mm,
autobiographical.
There you
Yes, what
yeah.
is wrong with me? Uh, but you're always going to have. I mean, somebody said that. I was listening to an interview this morning where somebody said your first book is always going to have aspects of the autobiographical in it, and I found that to be true with my book. Anyway, uh,
Yeah.
about
Is that your unreleased
yeah,
book?
it has to
Because you
do with
wrote something.
yeah,
Yeah.
terrorists and espionage, but undercurrent is greed and deceit, which are two of the deadly sins that I'm particular seven deadly sins that I'm particularly have been afflicted with.
And
But
I've read this book, and I would love for him to write the other.
We all have one or two, that's for sure.
well, but then, like she says, we have a progression of development. And here's another interesting thing. I don't know how your book is. I haven't read it, but James doesn't has never gone through that trajectory. He's such a humble genius that to me he's never put himself in aspects of himself into stuff. Yes, he has made himself a character in many books, but
Hmm.
uh, he has never. I don't see aspects of his personal life bleeding into work unconsciously.
I
It's a,
I really think I can only speculate, and I've only read a small portion of his work, though it would be substantial if it were any other author. He just has such a vast output. Uh, you understand this. Uh, I have seen in his nonfiction, I've observed changes within him. I've seen different positions where he's more of a critique on or he does switch up his opinions, but then you got to wonder, well, is he just playing a part?
Yeah.
You just don't know with James. I think he does divorce himself from his work. I think there's a distance that he assumes, and I do wonder if he has that distance. He can be a very personable person or individual, but there's still, I think, a bit of a I get the impression that he's out of the fishbowl, and he describes this in our video, Alien Anthropologist. You get a peek into that. I think he's kind of on the outside of things,
Yeah.
an observer of sorts. Not to say that he isn't his own person and personable and all that and the other, but I do think there is a distance there,
Well,
and it comes out in the writing.
I've always, he has a series of articles, and he hasn't done them lately, but sometimes in the articles he's the con, and sometimes he's the advisor to the con, and you never know, kind of in between which persona he will assume in these articles. Whether,
Doesn't that make you a better writer
oh, absolutely.
to be able to go, I'm gonna uh, I'm now this person for this work. I'm gonna do my darndest to write in the spirit of this other character, or this character that's definitely not me. um yeah, that's good
Yeah,
stuff. I want to ask you, do you have writing ambitions? I know you want to, excuse me, your motivation is clear. You want to get paid, but do you have any labor of loves along
I
the
used to
writing
I
side of
used to
things?
want to
Do you
do
plan on writing, or
I used to want to do historical fiction a lot. Like, that was my goal in life, is to write really good historical fiction. I don't really have goals anymore along those lines. I just don't. That would
you
be
don't have the ego that I do? I admit I do have a bit of an ego. I do want to see my stuff. I want to see it out there,
yeah.
and you look at animals, you look at dogs, you've got a dog walking around, you look at them and they're totally content just being a dog. But we're cursed with this mind and this want to create. And it's like before we even started this whole thing, this lovely this exchange, this dialogue, I was I was like beating myself up because I knew I should be writing right now. I should be editing down my anthropological, my compendium of articles. There's a lot of editing to do, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I just didn't have the energy to do it, and that there's this guilt attributed to that. Do you experience that?
Well, let me say, I don't do any editing at all. I do my draft and that's it, and I send it to
Mm.
Ann.
Ah,
and
yeah,
I, and
that's
this I really don't like to edit. I've always hated editing. I don't do multiple drafts. I do prep very hardcore, and while I'm writing, I might go back and rewrite some stuff while while in the moment. But I never go back and try to redo anything. I have it down. I might rework some stuff. Stop. I might rework some stuff on the fly, but never afterwards. In that same writing session, I'm going to fix anything I want to fix. And after
yeah.
that, I depend on Anne to know my style, and she's changed some stuff that I did not mean it to go that way, but you know what? It works, whatever, And I
Yeah,
don't,
yeah. You're
I
able
trust,
to let it go.
I
Yeah.
trust her judgment. Um, and this helps me write more free flowing. So I can just go and write and not worry about how how it's going to be turning out. I just need to get it out. My focus has always been, and would be if I was working on anything, just producing content. Like I said, every day. My deal was I started so many books. When I finally got one done, is like I'll never get a book done unless I work and produce this content until it's done. Now I'm going to start and finish this book. And so my goal was just to write incrementally until I got it done. And
Yeah,
some
that's smart.
pages, and sometimes it was 2 pages, some days it was 6, but I've determined I was that's grinding, and I didn't grind because the same thing is I don't want to produce garbage on some days and good stuff on other days. So I just worked as the spirit moved, you know, and tried to set the scene. Sometimes you have to put yourself in the character's place, as you said, and dwell on the particular person and how they differ from you, and put yourself in their head and their mind and whatever, and work on that. Um, and a criticism I'll make is that,
Yeah, as I'm
go ahead.
well, as I'm listening to you here describe, your process of writing, it really makes me appreciate Roman McClay all the more. Think about it. He wrote how many words? I'm sure Leanna knows, but
I don't, but I know it's a
he
lot of
wrote
pages.
what 1.5 million words, or was it 3 million? And then he broke, yeah, it was 3 million, I believe. In interviews he suggested as much. Within a 10-month period he just busted it out. He did 14-hour days. He was just writing, and then he edited it down to 1.5 million, I believe. That doesn't happen. Like, you have to be, he probably, I don't know, he there was something about him that was a bit abnormal, right? But not only that, um, it's fraught with errors, of course, grammatically speaking, but content-wise, the only other author where, I think of where he really understood a lot of the science behind, some of these concepts, the neurological, elements, they like discipline, like scientific disciplines. He might not have had it all right, but it was pretty darn convincing. But it was like Heinlein's work, where Heinlein understood, nuclear power and propulsion systems, and he would go on these diatribes, but you were convinced that Heinlein knew his stuff. That was Roman McClay the whole way through, you know. So I'm thinking of you where you do it incrementally, do it here and there. I'm the same way. But I'm also I'm pretty sporadic. Like, I'll just have flurries, little flurries of mania,
Yeah, and
by
that was
which I
what I
write.
wanted. I
But
wanted to
McClay
get away.
sustained it.
That was what I wanted to get away from, and that's the advantage of getting past the first 100,000. And we'll never know how he did it specifically to sustain it, but
Yeah.
not to depend on the mania of when I have something really good to relate, but focus on steadily working,
Mm.
which is very hard to do, and a real testament to somehow he managed to do it. I don't know what it's, and he never got bogged down on all the information research he was doing as well.
Yeah,
Which is,
exactly. That's what blows my mind, is that this is something that took, you had to research this stuff. He had to. At some point, did he it makes me wonder. It goes back to that quote I kind of preface this thing with, the you make the neurological connections, you read enough books, now you to paraphrase, now you've got this repository of information that you can call upon, and cast it within your own subsequent work. So we're imitating the work of others, but we're doing it within our own timbre, or with our own veneer. Um, but then I also recall McClay in one of his interviews he made the remark that there's some authors, and I think he might have attributed it to Hunter S. Thompson, who I'm not familiar as an author. You might be. I don't know much about him. Just that he comes, people talk about him. I just he never got into my rotation. But anyways, he mentioned, I think he attributed it to Thompson, but he mentioned that some authors live a full life and then they write their book. Some authors, on the other hand, start writing young and they live life whilst they're writing their book. McClay was clearly in the former category. He lived life, and then when he was ready to write, he just regurgitated it. He onto the page. What do you think of that? And then let me just add one more thing. Then you have Dow Mossman, whom I've been, intently interested in as of late, and the Stones of Summer. He had that one big book. He started as a teenager. 10 years later, he was forced to finish it by his publisher. Then he fizzled out and he was done. He's still alive, by the way. He wrote this in the 70s. Some people write just one book, The Invisible Man. There's one hit wonders, like that's all they do. So,
I
what do you
don't
think?
think I've watched. I think I watched an interview with Mossman not too long ago. I guess he's in his 80s now, and I may have read it, but he's
Yeah.
a reader. He likes to read. He's very whatever. I think it's his unique situation that made him indifferent to writing, and being. I compare him in some ways to John Kennedy O'Toole. Who wrote John.
Okay.
He wrote what was it, Confederacy of Dunces, and
Yeah.
and he was like one and done, and then next thing you know, bullet in the head.
Yeah.
Which thankfully Mossman didn't do, but sometimes you just move on. With me, I'm genuinely have been more interested in helping other people be successful with their books. It's not that I'm an unselfish, wonderful person. It's just that I genuinely would like to see other. I don't really care one way or the other if anybody likes my work at this point. I really don't. So I'm genuinely more interested in helping people be successful and gain an audience. And Robert Stark, I even helped Robert Stark out a lot with his novels, which I don't recommend, and his science fiction is. I'll relate the anecdote that his editor told me that at one point he took out all the perverted scenes, and Robert went and put them back in. so, so it's like he said, but these perverted scenes are not germane to the plot. We can take them all out, and nobody will notice the difference. And it turned out that they were from some stories that Robert had written, erotic stories and he just transferred them into the plot from these previous erotic stories. So anyway,
and the reader, so go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, I've written, and this will give you an example, and James and I talked about this before. We don't have scenes of sexual intercourse in our books. And so that's an example of why I don't worry about my content. Yeah, I have depraved and degenerate stuff in there, but it's not to titillate the reader or what.
That's well, there's
I don't. I put it in to discuss the reader, not to tempt the reader. That's my point. And James is like that as well, and we kind of follow the Louis L'Amour dictum: is Lamore never did that in any of his books, and that's just something, and we've talked about that. But I I don't hold with that. But like I said, just bottom line is I'd rather help other people at this point than do anything myself. And maybe with Mossman, I can't speak to his motivations, but it was very interesting. Maybe he just got everything he needed to do done that he wanted to put out there.
Yeah. Yeah, that is entirely possible, isn't it? You know? What so being what do you recommend? It's nice to get a perspective kind of outside of the thing. Um, so I've got kids, right? We homeschool, busy, right? All that sort of thing. You were homeschooled, my understanding. Um, what do you recommend a parent do to integrate, or well, that seems very mechanical and robotic. Let's rephrase this. How do you bring your kids into the process of writing where you guys can do it together and do it in a successful manner, so you're getting your stuff done, but you're also encouraging your children, sort of in the spirit of what you're saying, helping people out. I'd like to see my children come into their own as writers, even if it's not necessarily a muscle that they like to flex. But what does one do, a prospective writer who's also raising a family? And maybe Leanna can speak to some of this.
Yeah, I'll let her speak in a minute. I will say that I would have trouble giving any constructive advice, not only not being a parent, but I do come from a family of writers, and uh, when we were all writing separately, uh, it made me a very unpleasant person to be around, and I think it was the same for everyone else in the family that also wrote. So we were all very
Mm,
unhappy and not very well. And I'm not saying this would be the case for most people, or I'm just saying from my perspective, we all, when we got done with our daily writing, it was not a good atmosphere to be around any of us. We were horrible. We
hmm.
were like snakes. Uh,
A den, a den of
or
snakes, huh?
I can see if a injured animal.
no,
You poke an injured animal and they're gonna growl and gristle at you.
we were like strange cats or strange dogs around one another, just
Lurking and
angry and
Well,
growling and hissing and just not. And I'm not, and I don't know. That's my experience dealing with a family that all writes. And was actively writing manuscripts, not together, but at the same time, concurrently with one another. That when we were in
well,
a collective space or a familial space, we couldn't stand each other.
writing's a selfish pursuit, is it not?
Yeah, and that's the thing, and I'm not opposed to being selfish about it, and chasing glory and all this, but and I'm saying that's part of the process, but there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just I've
Yeah.
just moved on to other stuff. Um, so I'm less interested in writing, especially I so that in terms of kids, I'm going to let Leanna speak to that at this point.
I think
Yeah.
the biggest thing with children is you have to let them be themselves.
Yeah.
I
Mm.
think writing prompts are amazingly wonderful tools to teach kids how to write, but I think the prompts have to be about something that individual kid is interested in.
That's something we've learned. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
if
for
you
sure.
wanted to have like an hour where you and your older kids sat in the same space and worked on roughly the same type of thing, you will have needed to spend the time to know your kids and then write them a series of prompts where they could one day pick, 1 at 10 and just mess with it for an hour and see what comes out. The flip side to that,
Yeah, that's exactly it.
the flip
That's the
side,
thing with homeschool, isn't it? You've got to, well, with just learning in general, it's got to be something they're interested in. That doesn't mean, fun time every day where it's, you know, what my eldest likes to bake. Um, I think it would be a disservice if it was just, if we didn't also implement other disciplines. But the point being is that when you introduce those other disciplines, introduce activities that are of benefit to them, correct?
yeah,
Something they're interested in.
and maybe they don't write. Maybe it's a creativity hour where, like, your
Yeah,
oldest one that likes to bake, instead of physically getting into the kitchen, maybe they spend an hour doodling around trying to make a creation of their own that they can try to bake later. A list of
yeah, that's good. Oh man,
instructions, and
yeah,
maybe
that's
like my daughter is not a writer. She's not a great reader, but we used to have creative time. And one of the things she would do is draw different hairstyles. Well, that was her
yeah,
own version of creativity. And so I think it's more about you've got to write, you've got to learn to write creatively. I think it's more about growing the creative nature of each child, whatever that may be.
absolutely.
I think
Whatever form that takes.
I think Varg has a lot of good thoughts on this as well from homeschooling all those children. And his wife also, now Leanna doesn't care for as much, but she's written quite a few books related to the children and development and stuff. Varg's wife has, but
I just started listening to him today. You sent a video along, and I listened to he interviewed both of his children, and I was blown away.
well, they have
You
like
know,
6 children, so he just picked
oh,
two, I
okay.
guess, at random.
I was just blown away. That's the thing. A lot of these homeschool kids, and whether they're still kids or they're fully grown, they never cease to, like, honestly, I know it sounds corny, but they really kind of blow me away. Um, they're on a different wavelength. I didn't get that experience. I went through public school, so and I learned, I hated it. Maybe that's some of the impetus to homeschool. Maybe there's some of that there, but good quality people come out of any environment. I think those with the, what is it? The base um elements that make them exemplary down the road. I think they express themselves no matter. I think there is a bit of, maybe that sounds a little fatalistic, but I've seen good people come out of all environments, but you see more of it. I've seen more of it in the homeschool realm, to be frank. I guess I'm a bit of a zealot in that regard.
No, I don't
I don't
disagree
know.
with you, but interactiveness. So this has always stuck with me. My mentor, William Roberts, and we'll talk about him some other night. We had two homeschooling families who used to come to our meetings, and their children were both genius level. They had one family had two sons, and the other had a son and a daughter. And Will Roberts told me, watch the son and daughter of Dan. That was Dan and Verna was the couple's name, and they had they were on their second bunch of children. They'd raised two kids, and then they had two kids later in life, and they homeschooled all
Yeah,
four.
more seasoned at that point.
Yeah, but he said, watch
Yeah.
those kids. See how interactive they are. They're polite and well mannered and well behaved, but see how interactive they are with their parents. Whereas this other couple, who were actually boomers, raising their kids They got a real late start, and they were on their first set, I guess. And their kids were
Wow.
also well behaved, but they were kind of tamped down, suppressed. Like, you're going to do this, you're gonna do this, and they
Mm,
actually have all turned out well. But what Will's point was, uh, these people are all the two boys are always going to be in a subservient role because that's the way they were raised, to be subservient to and go along and just follow the leader. And whereas
mm,
the other two, the boy and girl, were taught to be more interactive, pursue their hobbies, be more like Varg's kids. Basically, they were raised more like Varg's kids, and that's what reminded me of it when I was watching the interviews with Varg's kids, about
mm.
that couple. And they, like I said, all four of the kids have turned out well, but the son and daughter, who are more interactive, they have better relationships and have children and just turned out better in terms of the overall social life. And the other two,
Yeah.
they did very well, academically and economically, but they don't have good social lives. And they're also very passive individuals from the way they were raised, lacking, uh, their parents did not. I'm not talking about interacting with other children. I'm talking about just having a good interactions with your children, which I'm
Yeah.
sure you
Yeah.
do. But I'm saying that was the advantage of that one. The parents of the boy and girl, had, that they basically treated them like adults and expected them to
Mm,
act like
yes.
adults. And
Yeah.
this is what I also see with the Amish children. Uh, from the time they're about 5 and 6, they are adults for all, and they're treated like adults. They are not. They are held to responsibilities and all that, but their parents don't treat them like children and talk, to them as if they were infantile or whatever. So
So there's a freedom, but with that is a heightened responsibility,
a
right?
very heightened
Um,
responsibility.
that's something, for us, homeschool is, and I know we're kind of getting off topic a bit, but it's interesting. Like, Leanne, I'm taking what you're saying with me. I think it's so important because there is it's changed over the years. Like one year we're doing more of the outdoor sciencey stuff and hands-on projects and history related building things. So maybe more of the that kind of thing. And then we're traveling Central America and we're doing, we're not doing a lot of workbooks and stuff. We're reading digital books, the yesterday's classics. Great, great stuff. And then we get back home and now we're doing more math. But what we've sort of dovetailed into now, and I think part of it has to do with um just my availability isn't I'm not as available. So there's this expectation now and this adjustment whereby we're really leaning on them to be more independent, and it happens to line up with their present ages, and I see it. But there's this tendency that both my wife and I have, having been through public school, where we try to impose, almost subconsciously, we get nervous that we're failing them, and we try to impose these structures on them, that really they're not conducive to this environment. I'm not saying they're wrong or right. They're just they're incongruent, and it causes a bit of chaos. But
Yeah.
I digress. It's an
Oh my
interesting
goodness,
phenomenon.
I'll tell
But
you, I told you,
leaving
both my kids were
them
public
to their
school.
own devices.
Right. And
Yeah.
both my kids were public school kids. And I never
Yeah.
checked homework. If you flunked a spelling test, that's on you. But
Yeah.
I always thought public school is meant to teach everybody the same thing at the same time. So I
Right.
really tried to take my time with them at home and learn who they were and what they were interested in, and do that as an educational activity that also was what they wanted. And so, we did, my son loves museums. So
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
we
yeah.
went to a lot of museums with him. My
Yeah.
daughter loved to people watch. And from
So
a young
you're supplementing, correct?
yeah,
You're doing your part.
and I will
Yeah.
tell you, my children are very different from each other. My son is a certified genius. He has an eidetic memory. He graduated from
Yeah.
university in 4 years with 3 separate degrees and a 4.0
Nice.
the entire time. But he's the
Yeah.
one, however, sitting at home at 25 with no job. Which
What
I
was
would
that last part?
he sits at home. He lives with his dad. He's 25 years old and he has no job.
He's a neat.
Yeah, he is. And I would not have expected that.
No.
When they were younger, I
Yeah,
would
well,
not
it's
have expected that.
do you have a bit of an educational background, Leanna? I seem to recall that may in fact be the case. You teach, don't you?
No, I worked at the university for 26 years in the fundraising office. So I
Oh,
wasn't
okay. Yeah.
in the educational side, but over the years, you get exposed to it whether you want to or not. And
Right.
my mom worked in an educational department at the university. So, and when
Yeah.
you're around nothing but higher education people, you get their mindset.
Right. It's this assimilation or osmosis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was hard on me. Like, I sent my daughter off to college and I had to go get her in the second semester. She's not a college person. And, that was hard on me because I worked around that. I saw the benefit of certain people, how they approached it. And it when I had to go get her, it felt to me like I had done something wrong. But the only thing I had done wrong is trying to fit her into a mold I made. And so that was a big lesson
It's
on how to deal with people is you may have an idea, but you can't make them be your idea.
yeah, that's the key there. Right. It's not everyone has a different path. I actually, I believe everyone has an inherent skill set, something that they're good at, and it's just a question of how do you bring it out, you know?
Right.
And as I'm listening to you, I think that's really a remedy for me to not be so hard on my kids, not expect them to fit within the parameters that that I perhaps um um in my haste, I just kind of um think we know what's right for them, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you've got to be flexible, right?
It's very humbling as a person to be a parent because you quickly learn that you don't know as much as you think you do.
Yeah,
And
right.
also, there are many, many ways to do the exact same thing, and none of them are wrong.
Right.
Well, I don't necessarily.
Yeah, it's a very humbling experience. It's a matter of you don't wanna mess them up too much, right? You wanna minimize that.
And my son became smarter than me at about 4 years old, and
Yeah,
I knew it while we
that's
were living it. So
But
don't we yeah, we want our kids to not I can't speak for all parents, but we want our kids to be better than us at the end of the day.
I
Um,
really,
and
I really,
I almost wonder, with what you're saying, Dr. Breck, when you're talking about you'd like to support others in their growth. I think there's sort of the same spirit in that, a I don't know.
Well,
There's something
I just,
selfless in that. You
I
might
just know what other
deny
people.
it.
Yeah, I just know what other people go through, having been through it. So if I can help, that's great. And I know Ann Sturzinger, for example, is probably a better writer. I'm choking this out. Is probably a better writer than I am. So I would rather see her. She deserves to have some acclaim and some success. I can be good at other things, and I'm, good. I feel like my field of what else I do is art, so I can be good at other artistic stuff. And I'm not saying Anne can't, but I would like to see her succeed. And James has chosen writing. James is good at other stuff. You're good at other stuff, but I just like to see other people succeed. So,
Yeah, sort of
uh,
be the hub, if you will. Well, I wouldn't have known
but
James and
I
company
I
without
just talked
having
about
first met
James
you, so
for so many years. I talked about James between 2012 and 2020. 12, that's 8 years at least. I talked
wow.
about James to people, and it finally started to get some traction. It was like forever, nobody.
Wow.
I said, this guy named James LaFond. I was thinking about James. I learned a lot. I was living in Nashville in 2015, and it was like, yeah, James has all this information about street stuff, and I'm walking down this street where they found bodies in the dumpster across the road. And I'm thinking, yeah, I think I'm good. I can outrun anybody who comes close to me. But the point is, that's how long. That'll give you a frame of reference. I was using James's street stuff that early, and so I'm just happy that James is, because I is meeting with a measure of success after telling people over and over and over for so many years and saying, you should read him, you should read him. And it seems all in vain. So
He
so his success seems like a vindication for me.
Yeah, that's good stuff. He was pretty obscure for a good long while, wasn't he?
Yeah,
He like this recent I've only seen him when he's had his core group of readers and he's had, he's got different factions of readers I've noticed. Some are
yeah,
interested more in the Plantation America stuff. The academic, they're like sort of like a gray hat academic crowd. It's interesting. And then you've got the combat arts, which comprises a good many, but then you've got weirdos like me that come in through the science fiction angle. And really, I only know them because of you. It was really just I pursued you via Sanction. I knew that you knew some stuff, that you and Leanna read it. I've seen some of your videos in the past, and then there's just a wellspring of literature um, that you explored, which I share some of that interest. And then this James LaFond character comes into the picture, and James is such a giving person. You give an inch and he gives back a mile. I just got to say that, like I'm like you. I want to support him, and he's contagious, really. Honestly, like he's given so much to my work, and um just as a writer, and I think that's actually pretty germane to what we're talking about. Find a mentor, find somebody who can push you in whatever pursuit that is. It happens to be writing for me. Find somebody who can read your stuff, tear it apart, and also push you along and motivate you. When I was in the military, it was like the the most fit periods I was in was when I had somebody with me who I just couldn't let them down. When it's just me left to my own devices, I tend to save it for tomorrow, or put that manuscript back in the drawer. But now I've got James entangled in this, and he's expecting me to get this stuff out there, and that's motivational.
Yeah.
Just like, when I was in grad school, I had due dates, and I had to get this stuff done, and I needed, in order to um give my defense and be done with the whole thing. This is where my compulsion came in. I was in grad school for entirely too long, but I use that to propel me further and generate content. Whereas with James, he went the independent author route, but we shared this compulsion to write and found our methods by which we can channel it. I'm just grateful to have met folks like you and Leanna and James, and and the others within this network of of curiosities, right? Of just interesting people, right? That get stuff done. So that's kind of where I'm at on that.
Yeah, and we're very appreciative of meeting you as well. And I will add, insofar moving past James and to your point on sanction, and that's another example of somebody I kind of obviously he's passed away now. He's gone to his reward, and God rest his soul or whatever. I don't want to see, the book's been suppressed, and that part of me is really rebelling against something being suppressed.
Oh,
And
me too. Yeah.
and so it's partially an act of pure rebellion, but it's a partially act of respect toward a guy who made an enormous sacrifice to create this work of art, and
Yeah.
to respect his legacy is to, but to have you have to be a writer in the first place to have an appreciation of what he suffered to create this, to
Mm.
then extend an appreciation, and honor his legacy and keep the book alive. But if we didn't write, we wouldn't know what he went through. You were talking about how,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah.
what you understand what he went through to put forth that content consistently. That was enormous
Yes.
effort. We can appreciate that being writers. Most people can't. And that's why we want to honor his deal by putting it out, not because of money or any other reason. I expect to lose money on the deal. I don't care as long as it gets out there. So that is my
Yeah.
my view on the subject.
Yeah. No, I share that with you. I share that sentiment. However you feel about the author, it's secondary, or it's tertiary, it's of tertiary concern, or it's a non-existent concern. Um, as far as, his, obviously, his not to belabor it, but um his history is marred with an episode, right? Let's just put it that way. But that shouldn't extend to the work, I feel. If you look, you know, I view the work as wholly separate, and it's worthy of ongoing curation, and it's worthy of, I believe it's I believe it was Neo-Victorian, or it was one of them, wrote a review describing Sanction as the book of our time, right?
Yeah.
I'm still, the jury's out on that for me. I It's a beloved work for me. I do believe that it's deserving of its place within the great works of of the modern age, certainly. And the other part of that is, what was I going to say on that? Oh, yeah. So I believe Moby Dick correct me if I'm wrong, did it sell 1,000 copies in his lifetime?
I
I
think
think it was 1,000.
it was under, yeah, it was 1,000 or less.
So think about this. You know how Moby Dick, and I know Leanna has talked on this, the Moby Dick connection with Sanction. It's riddled throughout the pages. Um, you see it again expressed here where Sanction sold 3,000 copies in his lifetime, and now it's suppressed. You do realize that we're amongst the few, just as in Melville's time, the few to have read this seminal work, this marvel of a book. I mean, I really do put it up there. Um, where it goes beyond us, I I almost wonder if it's. I mean, I almost wonder if we have a hand in that potentially. I'm not, and I'm not suggesting. I don't want this to come across as like a cultish sort of vibe. This is just love for a book.
Yeah.
This is love for, like you said, a man's creation.
Yeah,
So
appreciation of his work, and I don't think Lyndon has any hope of heaven, unfortunately. But how many of us do? So it's not that I'm not casting the first stone as much as just that's just my impression, but I don't think any less of him for it.
Right.
That doesn't just it has no it has no bearing on my opinion of him as a writer
yeah,
and whatever else. And I think it's very important people watching this should try to read the book, and because there are so many meaningful passages. And I'm about to put out another little writing deal on well, I'm going to be talking somewhat about the books that inspired Ayn Rand. Yeah. It's a weird
yeah.
question. But
Are
anyway,
you? Is that? Yeah, that's.
yeah, the point is Ayn Rand is one of those figures, people like to criticize, but her books are powerful. Whatever else you may say about her or her ideology, which I don't agree with or whatever, they are powerful works, They have a lot of
Yeah, I certainly,
yeah.
Well, I mean,
I
really,
certainly felt that way. Yeah, yeah.
if we only read works performed by people that we quote unquote approved of, we wouldn't have very much to read.
Right. If you look at, well, yeah, you could bring up any example, really. And many authors are tortured in their own right. And it's kind of like you don't want to meet your heroes. You've ever heard that saying? Um, there's some unscrupulous behavior amongst certain writers that nevertheless produced uh beloved works. And I just look at the children's literature canon. There's some stuff there that's if folks really knew the lives behind some of these authors, or they might raise an eyebrow. But um I'm able to, like y'all, I'm able to separate the how the author from the work. And then I'm listening to you, Paul, and I'm listening to how you you're not able to let that phase you. The other, how rare is that? That's not the common. There's times where I read Sanction, and I just think um most normies out there would just relegate it to they would just immediately dismiss it. Just you know so
Well,
I just wonder how uncommon is it.
I think a big deal for me is, obviously I just try to stay away from normies and don't live a normie life. And
Yeah.
I genuinely don't like that kind of deal. And so I feel like McLeod was the sanctioned books are very, I feel like they're normie friendly, but see, that's how far out of touch and off base I am. I feel like
I don't think they are. I think I think of them as bullies. They're a bully of a book, of a
no,
series. Like
you're
they just
correct.
bully you around.
You're
What's
right.
that?
You're right, but you're more correct than I am. But that's just my impression being farther out of the loop. You see, I read this and think, oh yes, this will
You're-
resonate with normies. But see, I thought my books would resonate with normies. So I'm just saying I'm farther
yeah,
out of the
yeah.
loop. My perspective is skewed. So, but that's how I approach things just from being, I don't have a normal appreciation for what normies who read would read, or how they would react to it, so.
Yeah. You're standing on Neptune. I might be somewhere on, like Mars or something, relative
Well,
to,
you're closer
it's
to,
further out of the stratosphere.
yeah, what's going on than I am. So, because I genuinely
Yeah.
don't talk to a lot of these people, and anymore, people talk about aura and vibes. These people don't feel comfortable around me, even in a crowded room. They're gonna avoid me, so I don't get to interact with them. I'm not opposed to interacting with them. I just don't get to.
Yeah. Yeah. Understood. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think this has been a great chat. I think we covered a lot. What do y'all think? Is anything we want to close on, or
Well,
um
I would like to say that um, I have purposely not learned very much about the author of Sanction because I wanted to read it.
oh,
I have wanted to read it without any preconceived notions.
wow, that's a hard thing to do with what
Yes,
information is out there.
yes. But I will say this. I think this book it's gonna if we can get it out there, it is gonna resonate with a lot of people from very, very different backgrounds because this is a book, and I don't know how you accomplish this, but I feel like whatever your preconceived notions are of science or how time flies or anything is going to make the book different for you. I think this is a book that's going to speak to every single reader a little bit differently.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that, actually. Yeah,
so
there's just so
um,
much to unpack.
It is.
on a parting note, do we want to go into volume 1 tomorrow evening, or do you want to pick a different day? I'm good with tomorrow evening if you're available, like after 8.
I'd love to, but I think maybe we set it out a bit further.
Okay.
Just take a breather. I'd be
Sunday,
delighted
Sunday or
though to
Monday.
continue and just really get in the nuts and bolts. Yeah.
Okay, just let me know and we'll plan on it.
Yeah, I love that. And if you find any other, you know, enthusiasts, maybe we bring them on. I don't know.
Yeah, and if you get a
I'll work
hold
on
of
that.
if you get a hold of what's his name, definitely would love to talk to that guy. Um,
Ye-
so uh,
Yeah, absolutely.
so
Well, it's been a pleasure, folks. I appreciate you both. Thank you again for your time and just being willing to discuss some of this stuff so that we're not stuck on an island with these crazy thoughts.
well, we appreciate you coming on, and shout out to Dominic, Mr. Gray, in these things going down, who put out a deal for your YouTube page today, and hopefully
Yes.
maybe promulgate these videos a little bit. So
I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah.
Very
He's got-
grateful, Don. Thank you.
he's got a solid page going, Mr. Gray. So I'm gonna we'll close her down there,